Long after his decorated lacrosse career was over, Ross Powless delivered an after-dinner speech at a function in Fergus, Ontario. It was there that he ended it by saying, "Us old lacrosse warriors, the older we get, the better we was." Richard Powless is the son of the late Ross Powless. Richard, your father will forever be known now as one of the best to ever do it. Canada's Sports Hall of Fame in the Builder category for lacrosse. What does this honor mean for you and for the family?
Well, we're all very proud. Um, it's quite an accomplishment. Lacrosse was his life. You know, he dedicated his life to it. It's part of our heritage, and he would have been proud. And we are so very proud. You know, we watched him over the years, of course, and also as well knowing that he's joining his son, our brother Gaylord, into the same Canada Sports Hall of Fame would have been a source of pride as well.
Yeah, I mean, your dad was an old school kind of guy. What do you think he would think of all this hoopla?
Well, he's quite humble. He never ever really bragged about his accomplishments, so he would still be humble. You know, he would be proud, as I said. He would be glad, and he would thought of all the people who helped get him there. He always acknowledged other players, you know, and his teammates. His grandfather played lacrosse. His dad played lacrosse. His uncles played lacrosse. We come from a proud lacrosse heritage. You know, it's the creators game, as we call it. So he would have been very proud to receive this.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's so interesting about the family lineage. You mentioned your brother, obviously his son, but also Ross grew up watching his dad and his uncle, and it was during intermissions or in between periods where he'd get out there with the stick. Just how significant a sport has this been? How important has lacrosse been in the Powless family?
Well, we grew up with it. My dad talked about when he was growing up, there would be maybe four or five organized teams on the reserve, and they had outdoor lacrosse rinks. Sometimes it was played in the field, but sometimes they put up boards and then they played on dirt. You know, and there were different organized teams. But teams from off the reserve would send scouts on to see if their upcoming, lacrosse players. My dad was one of them that was noticed. But we all play. I mean, 8 boys in the family. We all played, and we learned from my dad, and of course, our oldest brother Gaylord became one of the best under my dad, certainly. So it's a proud heritage that we come from, and it's also a community heritage because Six Nations has become a powerhouse in lacrosse over the last few decades, winning many championships.
Yeah, there are 200 years of Powless family history at Six Nations. Lacrosse has been a big part of each of those generations. Look, your dad's going in as a builder. His contributions are why we're here, Richard. But I think it's important we not get this thing twisted. I mean, your dad was a beast of a player too. 4 times a Mann Cup champion. When you speak to people in the game of how good he was, what do others tell you about the kind of player that Ross Powless was?
Well, I looked up there was a video called Chiefs and Champions done a few years ago that covered part of his career. And there's a couple of quotes in there I want to read from teammates. Roger Smith, Lacrosse Hall of Fame teammate, quotes from our dad. He said that Ross was a great talent, built on hard work and determination. He was the guy you wanted on your team. Ross was tough, but he didn't take many unnecessary penalties that would hurt the team. He put the team first. He would share his knowledge with anyone who asked for it. He was a great coach. Another quote is from Stan Cockerdon, who's the executive director of the Ontario Lacrosse Association. He said he was highly respected in lacrosse circles. The thing that I remember most about him is his passion for the game. And then one of the obituaries for Dad said basically he was known as the ambassador for lacrosse, and he basically was seen to have revived the game starting in 1950s and 1960s. So that's it acknowledged his contribution.
Ross Powless twice was the winner of the Tom Longboat Award, given to what was called in those days the best native athlete in the entire country. Richard, I think an important part of your dad's journey is what happened in his childhood. When he was 8, he was taken from his home, forced to live at a residential school. And for the next 6 years of his life, his dad wasn't with him, and there was no lacrosse to build the foundation of his game in those important years, in those foundation years. And yet somehow your father found a way to be a star when he left the residential school at the age of 14. What did he share with you about getting the opportunity to finally play after his favorite sport was taken away from him at such a young age?
Well, when he came back home, lacrosse was still being played, and he still had these role models. His father and his uncles playing and cousins playing, and as I said, there were local teams playing on the reserve in box lacrosse outdoors on dirt. He would have had access to it, but it was such a part of his heritage, and part of the community. Anywhere you would go, and including other reserves, lacrosse was there, and so it could be played.
Now we're here for what your father did with the sport. As a builder, he was a driving force to grow youth hockey and especially youth lacrosse to the Six Nations. How important, Richard, do you believe your father's influence was in keeping Canada's official sport growing in so many different communities across the country?
Well, he was involved in revitalizing it in our community. He helped out with minor lacrosse and minor hockey, and he did equipment drives so players could play. Because we couldn't afford even players for his own sons with 8 boys playing. But he got involved early, and he had many friends over the years from different First Nations communities. And when asked, he would help out, and he would be an ambassador, as I said, for lacrosse anywhere he went. It was his life. He promoted it. He was respected. People knew him, and over the years, Six Nations teams developed. Of course, he was a playing coach for several Six Nations teams that won championships. And, as that grows and people see that there are winning Indigenous teams, it promotes the sport itself because people want to be on winning teams. And that's one thing that Six Nations has been able to do.
Richard, your dad made an imprint on so many athletes over the years. Are there a couple of lacrosse players that come to mind from the Indigenous community that benefited from his mentorship and leadership?
Well, I would say the obvious one is his son, our brother Gaylord, because he became, in his own right, one of the best lacrosse players in Canada, and the two of them are the only father-son in Canada's Lacrosse Hall of Fame, and now Canada's Sports Hall of Fame. So that would be number one. The other one I can think of is a teammate and former roommate of Gaylord, Bruce Todman. They played together in major senior men's and professional, and against each other. And Bruce, who unfortunately just passed away this year, spoke about playing for my dad and how much he learned, playing with Ross, and he became a close, actually, family friend. And my mother used to set a plate for him even when he wasn't around. So, but Bruce spoke about the influence that my dad had on being taught by him.
Richard, you mentioned the Canadian Lacrosse Hall of Fame. Your father entered that in 1969. Your brother joined him in 1990. They became the only father and son players to do so at the time, and now they join each other in Canada's Sports Hall of Fame. Congratulations to the entire family.
Thank you very much.